What's going on, guys? For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Ty, and today in this video, we're going to be doing something a bit different. That is, talking about an older movie for once. That film is going to be Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, of course. It just hit its 20th anniversary, and because of that, it was re-released in theaters. So I got to see this in theaters with a couple of friends, and man, it was just an absolutely phenomenal time. Like, maybe that spoils my feelings on the film, but either way, just wanted to talk about the movie as a whole, review it, give my rating of it, but just sort of just discuss this film and what it's done for pop culture. And all of that. Now listen, let me just start off with this. When it comes to Star Wars as a whole, I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan in the world. Star Wars as a franchise is within probably like my top 10 franchises, probably closer to like 5 than 10. I don't know. There's just a bunch of other franchises that I just personally like more. Still really enjoy Star Wars, and again, especially as like a big blockbuster fan, saying that it's within my top 10 is definitely a major compliment. I've just never like completely connected with Star Wars where like I'm clicking and I'm firing on all cylinders, but I still love the franchise, don't get me wrong. I just think that it has a lot of duds, and also there's just a lot of Star Wars content that honestly I haven't even checked out yet. Like I haven't seen Rebels, I haven't seen some of the Disney Plus shows, especially because honestly I heard they're bad, but I've seen all 9 episodes plus the extra 2 films. And getting into Revenge of the Sith, when it comes to this prequels specifically, okay, do I like the prequels? I started off with Star Wars, now I'm going to break it down to the prequels, then we'll talk about the actual film. But when it comes to the prequels, I like the prequels somewhat. I like the vibe, the aesthetic of the prequels. I enjoy the characters. I don't know if it completely meshes. I think that in a way, the individual movies aren't as good as the overarching narrative of the story. And I'll explain why that is in a second, but when I look at Phantom Menace, I'm really not a big fan of the Phantom Menace. I kind of like flip-flop back and forth on whether I think it's like a 5 or 6 out of 10 movie. I think that there's really great stuff in there, and I like the political aspects of it, but I just find it to just be, at the end of the day, a boring film. Like, I understand that the Star Wars name is attached to it. It has the Duel of the Fates fight at the end. It's really awesome. I love all the Naboo stuff and the world building. It's gorgeous. Padme, and I also like the political stuff that's involved in it, like all the trade stuff, but I just think it's paced horribly. And yeah, there's some quotes, there's always a bigger fish. Again, the Qui-Gon battle and stuff, but I just think that there's 2 really good bookends where the opening's great, the ending's great. But from there, one thing I will say is that I do think the prequels get better, which I guess you could say is spoiling my thoughts on Revenge of the Sith, but I actually kind of like Attack of the Clones. I think it's a pretty solid film. It's definitely like in the middle or towards like the bottom of my Star Wars rankings, but this is obviously a very strong franchise from the show, from the movie perspective at least, because the shows, honestly, I feel like, depending on what you're talking about, but especially Disney Plus stuff isn't as good, but when we're just talking about the movies, there's a lot of good movies, so saying that isn't really a slight towards it. I think it's like a 3 out of 5 film. I really enjoy Attack of the Clones because I like the mystery element in there of what's going on with the clones. I really like the Obi-Wan mystery element. I think that might be my favorite part of this movie, and how he goes to Kamino, I'm pretty sure what it's called, that water planet where Jango Fett is. Such an awesome moment where there's this conspiracy going on. Obviously there's a conspiracy over the course of all these films with Palpatine and stuff, but it's just the point, of course, that in this movie it feels like things start to unravel. I really like the style of this film as well, like when that little bug tries to kill Padme, that whole sequence, the nighttime Coruscant sequence, I'm pretty sure that takes place on Coruscant, and just feel like it's a pretty cool movie overall. Even the end battle on a Geonosis, is that what it's called? Genosha? Forgetting what the name is, but either way, I just think it's really great. I'm pretty sure it's Geonosis, unless I'm just making that up, but it's cool. We got Mace Windu fighting, cutting off Jango's head. It's an awesome film. I really like the aesthetic of it, though, more than the story, because I get that people say, man, it's a bit boring, but now we finally have our Anakin and Obi-Wan dynamic because Hayden Christensen was introduced, and now that kind of brings us into Revenge of the Sith. And of course, Revenge of the Sith is the movie that we're here to talk about today, but you know what? While I had the chance, I figured let me just ramble about the prequels a little bit because I don't really get the opportunity to talk about old movies all the time. But Revenge of the Sith, let me just make this very clear. I'm pretty sure at this point in time, it's my second favorite Star Wars movie. I almost said favorite, but no, it's my second favorite Star Wars film. I love Revenge of the Sith. I just think it's so great, and this is the thing. This is my main gripe with the prequels, but also something that I feel like was almost like a sacrifice. In my mind, whenever someone talks to me about the prequels, this is the one thing I say. I feel like Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones almost sacrificed being good movies just to set up Revenge of the Sith. Now listen, that's not like an excuse really, but I'm just talking about how I personally feel. Like, they also could have been good films, and you know, if you like them, I'm not saying like they're not really that great. I see the greatness in them, you know, like in The Phantom Menace, even though it's a bit boring, the pod racing scene's pretty cool, and I can see why people would like it. I didn't really grow up with Star Wars 2. I don't really have like nostalgia for Star Wars, honestly, like some other franchises, but you know, it was pretty relevant in my life. But there was just other franchises I liked way more. Like, I watched Disney movies and stuff, I watched Jurassic Park, like that type of stuff. But so I don't really have like the nostalgia factor. I watched Spider-Man movies, but the thing is, I feel like The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, the biggest positive that I could truly give them is that they set up Revenge of the Sith perfectly. The dialogue, watching Anakin's turn, which maybe was a little bit rushed, but at the same time, what are you going to do? Especially as we get into Attack of the Clones, where again, we're getting the grown-up Anakin. It's now Hayden. And one thing I want to say about Revenge of the Sith specifically is that a lot of people hate on Hayden's acting, and I'm going to be getting into this in a second, but a lot of people hate on his acting. They say he's not a good actor. I think that his performance is perfect for the type of movie that they were trying to make. And let me just dive into that, then I'll get back onto this talk about Hayden's performance. I feel like the reason I love Revenge of the Sith is because it almost feels like a story that someone's telling you. And let me just explain what I mean by that. Every single movie, obviously, is a story that someone's telling you. There's a script that's being written, but it almost feels like someone's sitting you down by the campfire and they're like, hey, there's this tale that's been told over hundreds or thousands of years, and I'm going to tell it to you here right now. It almost feels like that's why the dialogue, I feel like sometimes, is so on the nose. It could be so corny, but it's also so great, and that's why it's so quotable as well, where, yeah, sometimes the actors are giving these corny performances, but I think that adds to it, and it makes it feel somewhat Shakespearean. I think that's why I love it. It feels more like a tale than a normal narrative or a normal story. I think what I really like about this film as well, sort of just tying into that also, is that this movie, like Star Wars has always been science fiction, I feel like this movie is almost closer to being fantasy than science fiction because of those Shakespearean elements and the way that all the dialogue is so over the top. My favorite genre of film, this is something that I was actually talking with my girlfriend with the other day, is what I can only describe as heightened reality, which is basically where, you know, there's a normal story, but there's some things that take things a bit over the top, some sequences out of reality. I guess you could say like musicals sometimes are heightened reality where everything will be normal and then all of a sudden there's a musical sequence, which obviously it's not like any of the people acknowledge the musical sequence. It's just in there. In the La La Land, the planetarium sequence where all of a sudden Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone are walking around, then they start flying in the air. That's not actually happening in real life, but it's heightened reality. I think the way that this ties back, just circling back to Revenge of the Sith, is that in Revenge of the Sith, I would almost describe it as heightened fantasy. Fantasy is already fictional, okay? We have lightsabers, and we have, evil emperors, and we have the Sith, and we have the Force. This is not real life. This is a galaxy far, far away. But in a way, with, like I just said, the Shakespearean elements, it almost feels even more over the top, which I guess technically you could describe as camp and being campy, which is the perfect definition for like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies where they're campy, but it's not really as campy because it's leaning more towards just, again, the fantasy, so it feels like this heightened fantasy. That's the best way that I could describe it, and I think it's just so awesome when you look through it with that lens. The problem is, I could understand why someone would absolutely hate this movie. I could completely understand. Like, again, I love it. I'm going to be like, oh, come on, you don't like this movie? But I can understand why someone would watch this and be like, this movie sucks. Like, I'm not even going to sit here and really defend it. I get why you would think that. The acting's bad. They rush the story, this, that, whatever. It's corny. I can understand why someone would think that. But I also understand why, obviously, millions and millions and millions of people love this film. They love Hayden. They love Obi-Wan. And that's the thing. There's just so many good lines. The characters of Obi-Wan and Padme, and even just what's going on like within, I believe, the Senate. Like, I'm not too good with like the Star Wars lore, but like the council and stuff. I like the little political moves. I like how Palpatine is so calculated to where his plan really did end up working. And this movie does end in tragedy. It's almost not even like anyone wins. It's pretty much just all loss. It really sucks, of course. And this film, again, like just getting into it here, the action, this film is just action-packed. The first hour or so, I would say, there was a lot of dialogue, but a lot of the dialogue is just very interesting. And again, we start to watch Anakin's crawl and how he's afraid of Padme dying because he's starting to have these visions, and he's basically just desperate to find an answer. And while this is happening, simultaneously Obi-Wan and the Council is basically denying him, not necessarily on purpose, because they don't know that he's like turning to the dark side, even though they know he's powerful, and they're just like, hey, listen, buddy, you're still young, all right? They're kind of almost like disrespecting him. They're like, you can be here, but you're not a master, a Jedi master, which is what what's it called? Samuel L. Jackson, Mace Windu says to him, of course, with the purple lightsaber, because that's so cool, of course. And there's just so many sequences where you could see how he's being tested and why he would turn to the dark side. It makes a lot of sense. And I just think that, again, it's so over the top. And I love it. I think a good example of this is where Mace Windu presses the Emperor. He's like, yo, we're here to arrest you. Anakin comes in, right? He goes to save him, whatever. You know, he's shooting the lightning at him. And it's so bad that it's good in a way where, like, the Emperor's, like, yelling. He's like, ah, while he's getting beat up or whatever you could say. And it just turns into one of these things where when he pushes Mace over the edge, like, you understand why he would do that. It doesn't feel out of left field. He's been disrespected. He's confused, and he's so desperate because he knows that Palpatine has that power, at least that he heard with Darth Plagueis the Wise and stuff, about how, you know, I learned this power to that, how, you know, if someone was to die, we could, like, bring them back, you know, or prevent them from dying, you know, if that was to hypothetically happen, and he's planting a seed in his head. I love that. I love that manipulation. And obviously it's so sad because, like Obi-Wan says in the Mustafar battle, which we will talk about in a second because, God, it's phenomenal. It's, you know, they were brothers. They were brothers. You were my brother, Anakin, right? You were the chosen one. That's what the reality is. But unfortunately, he ended up being turned because he was being just pushed and pulled inside. You know, it was like tug of war. And you could see why. And at the end of the day, he technically had good intentions, Anakin, because he's just trying to save the one person that he truly loves. He loves Obi-Wan too, but obviously a partner, his girlfriend, his wife, whatever you want to say, whatever they were going to be, is just the point that they were together. They were so happy together. That was his happiness, but that was also his weak point. Everyone, that's like any movie ever that involves a hero, there's weaknesses, right? Why can't Spider-Man date Mary Jane? Because that would be a weak point. That's what happens with James Bond. Whenever he meets a woman, he's like, I don't know if I should do this. It puts them in danger. They end up getting killed a lot of the times. Even with Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible, right? Whoever's close to you, that's a weak point. That's what happened with Anakin. The people that are closest to you, I feel like sometimes, even though it's great and you want to have them, they're weak points. They're pressure points that can be, you know, manipulated with. Well, they could, you know, people can manipulate you, I should say, into doing things that maybe you shouldn't, but because you're always going to be willing to save the people that you love the most. And I just find it to just be such a fascinating film. I think it's beautiful. Like, I understand that some people are like, oh, the CGI looks bad, but I just think that George Lucas just has like this really good charm, and movies that were coming out at the time, like the Pirates of the Caribbean films, I think look way better, even though obviously, again, they came out at the same time. There isn't really an excuse, but the way the CGI looks, I feel like just fits the Shakespearean vibe, the over-the-top nature of this movie. I just think it's so good. That's it. It's just so good. And the Mustafar battle at the end, it's one of the greatest endings ever, one of my favorite battles ever. It's personal. That's what makes fighting so good in movies. Like, action can be great on its own, but action is truly great when there's emotion and there's stakes behind the action. Because when there's just people punching each other, if our hero's just beating up someone random, it doesn't matter. But when you have two brothers fighting because one of them turned to the dark side, there's a lot of pulling and just confusing things going on with emotions you're being torn in half like Anakin. The emotion is what makes it so powerful. You need the emotion there. Padme, of course, being that main motivator. Anakin thinks that Obi-Wan turned Padme against him when that's not the case. And at a certain point, they've talked for so long. And again, like at a certain point, it's like, listen, we need to just fight this out. There's no other way about it. He's just too far in. He's in too deep, and there's no going back. And I really like the line. It's very subtle because obviously everyone knows it. I'm not acting like no one's ever heard this before. But of course, Anakin says, of course, if you're not with me, then you're my enemy. But what I really like is what Obi-Wan says after that, where he goes, only Siths deal in absolutes. He's basically saying, oh, so you're a Sith now. And also, it's just such a clever line. It's just such a subtle banger, dealing in absolutes. It just sounds so cool too. And of course, you know, moving on from Anakin, I've been doing a lot of Anakin talk here. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. I would say that's like his career-defining performance, or at least just character that he's played. I know he's in Trainspotting and a lot of other stuff, but he's really good. I feel like he has like this charm where he seems very intelligent. He's very calculated. I just really enjoy his performance, his chemistry with Anakin, and of course, he's just a cool character. It's as simple as that. And I think that Alec Guinness would be like, happy with his performance or whatever. I don't know. Maybe he's seen the movie or whatever has happened, but I just think that he does such a good job of portraying the character. From there, I just feel like the world feels so rich. We're seeing new planets. We're just seeing a bunch of great stuff. And it leads us into the original trilogy really well, because it's so interesting, because obviously when you already have a foundation laid, which was the original trilogy, now you're making the new trilogy, which was technically a prequel, because it's the prequels, like everyone says. I think it could sometimes be hit or miss, because I look at Lord of the Rings, where that came out, it was great. Then you make The Hobbit, which is a prequel sequel. The only reason I'm saying sequel is just because it came out after, but it's going before The Lord of the Rings. And yes, it's based off a book, but I'm just saying that, I guess you could say, for the most part, was a miss. I kind of enjoy those movies. I don't think they're like bad or anything, but not as good as The Lord of the Rings. So you're putting a lot of risk into a franchise like that, or into a trilogy, I should say. So I think all things considered, Star Wars fans were satisfied, because they're just fun movies. And I just think Revenge of the Sith, at the end of the day, it's action-packed, but it has the power and the emotion behind it to make it not just another sci-fi movie. It's building up to one of the greatest villains of all time, and his origin story, in a way, even though it's tragic, even though it's very sad, even though we watch him kill the younglings. One thing I do want to also add, like I sort of alluded to this before, the theatrical experience was great. It was me and like 6 or 7 of my friends, man, and we were just having such a good time. We're just like joking around and stuff whenever they're saying funny lines. People were clapping at moments, and it was just awesome, man. It was really awesome, especially because I'm actually about to be done with school, so it's going to be like one of the last movies that I get to see with my friends in theaters while I'm here at college. So yeah, definitely a very important one for me. Very excited to see Thunderbolts with them as well this week, but then that's pretty much it. But yeah, guys, I mean, I'm just head over heels over this movie, man. It's so great. Again, I could understand why someone would strongly dislike this movie, but I also, obviously, because I'm on this side, I'm on the right side of history here, I could understand why people love this film. I didn't even grow up with it. Like I said, I never really watched Star Wars as a kid, but now that I've seen them, I think this is only actually my second time seeing Revenge of the Sith. I watched it like a year and a half ago, and then I just watched it again. I know that sounds kind of crazy to some of you that have probably seen it like 40 times, but yeah, man, just such a great film, a really good sci-fi film, or should I say a really great fantasy film, because that's honestly what I truly believe it is at the end of the day. The Shakespearean elements, so over the top, so much larger than life. That's why I believe it's great. A lot of emotion, and it's just a cool movie. It's a cool ass movie. It's as simple as that. But listen, my rating for Revenge of the Sith, just to kind of stamp it here in this video, is going to be a 4.5 out of 5. I think it's a really great film. I don't know where it really loses that half star. Maybe it like drags a bit towards like the end of the first act, but, and again, there is some corny stuff in there where sometimes I'm like, okay, I wish they just dialed it back just a little bit here. 4.5 out of 5. Love this movie. Let me know what you guys think about this movie down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll talk to you in the next video.